I am in Springfield, Illinois, outside the tomb of President Abraham Lincoln here. Now, this is a very impressive place here in Oak Ridge Cemetery, a very historic cemetery. And while I am going to go into the tomb today, on this video I wanted to focus a little more on the cemetery. Now, this is one of the most impressive tombs in the entire country. You can see it has a very large obelisk and a bunch of statuary around it. It's pretty awesome and very fitting for the man who lays well beneath it. Again, I mentioned I am going to go into the tomb. Now, what's interesting here, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I found out when I got here, you actually have to make a reservation on Eventbrite to get interior admission. I think I got that pretty easily, so hopefully we'll be going inside soon. They're operating at a less capacity and more limited hours than usual. But hey, at least it's open. Directly in front of the tomb is a big bronze bust of Abraham Lincoln by Gutzon Borglum, the sculptor of Mount Rushmore. Now, this one is pretty famous because it's tradition to touch his nose. See, this is a bronze statue, and when bronze is touched a lot by human oils, it turns kind of, you can see there's kind of a goldish color there. So it is believed that if you rub Lincoln's nose there on the statue, it will bring you good luck. However, due to the current circumstances, it is not appropriate to touch Lucky Abe Lincoln's nose, and they have a sign here: visitors should not touch the statuary, including the bronze bust. So unfortunately, that classic tradition has been put on hold. I've got a while before the first tomb entry of the day, so I'm going to explore the front sections of the cemetery before going inside the Lincoln tomb. Here's another sign regarding instructions during the pandemic. Oh, this has made everything so much more complicated. I really like this memorial over here. It's a memorial to the custodians of the Lincoln tomb. You see, a custodian at least used to live in this house here that was built right next to the tomb in the 1890s, and they would protect and guard the tomb. And the custodian of one, back when the body was almost robbed in the 1870s, he actually prevented Abraham Lincoln's body from getting robbed. And here on this plaque here shows Abraham Lincoln gazing at the moon. Not far at all from the Lincoln tomb is the tomb of Governor John R. Tanner, which is in a very unique Pantheon style tomb. You can see the stone was cut very blocky, and it's just really unique. Like, it even has a dome. Very interesting tomb. I guess since his plot was so close to Lincoln's, he wanted a tomb that people would notice, and I think he certainly accomplished that. And you can actually peer in to the mausoleum, and if you can see up there, just like the Pantheon in Rome, it is open air. Beneath it, there's a bust of Governor Tanner and his tomb. It looks like someone left a bucket on his tomb. Don't think it's been cleaned in there for quite a while. I thought this was a gravestone. It looks like it's a trash can. At least I think it is. That is the Abbey of Oak Ridge Cemetery, erected in 1912. I'm not sure of the exact purpose of this building. Don't know if it was the office or what, but it looks pretty cool. There's an old fountain, and American flags are set up on the front driveway before you get to Lincoln's tomb. Now, I did want to show this. I noticed this last time I was here. So right there's the main gate. Here's a monument company. And then right here is a very vintage Lincoln souvenir and gift shop right outside his tomb. It does not appear to be open, but it does seem to be a historic Route 66 trading post or gift shop, obviously themed around Lincoln at his tomb, and it looks like it's still in business. Upon entering the cemetery, you can see Lincoln's tomb back there, but also this unusual and prominently located grave. This is the grave of Roy Bertelli, also known as Mr. Accordion. Now, Mr. Bertelli here was an accordion aficionado, and he really wanted to be buried in this cemetery. But the thing was, the cemetery here, they didn't like his plot, and they didn't want to give it to him. And he felt greatly disrespected because he was a veteran, and he decided to get it anyways. He overcame the lawsuit, and he had this very large, exaggerated tomb that was probably quite expensive, built right here at the entrance. Now, he trolled the cemetery pretty hard by getting this built and them having no choice but to let it be. But also, he's not even buried in this big sarcophagus. He was buried at a different cemetery. Didn't even care at that point. And that is quite a unique sight. Abraham Lincoln, the Abraham Lincoln's tomb, and an accordion. Here's a monument to the Governor's Guard, Veterans Corps. So were these like bodyguards of the governor of Illinois? I'm not really sure. I've made my way back over to the Lincoln tomb in preparation for going inside. Usually you can walk right in when it's open, so this is a bit of a hassle. The tomb was built from 1868 to 1874, but the bodies of Lincoln and his sons have been shuffled around quite a bit due to the attempted body robbery and the disrepair the tomb fell into in the late 19th century. If you'd like a more in-depth history of the tomb itself, then please check out my other video focused on that linked in the description. The architect of the tomb, Larkin G. Mead, also sculpted the Lincoln statue and the 4 bronze statue groupings of Civil War infantry, cavalry, navy, and artillery. The front door is blocked off unless there's a timed entry group going in, but my group should finally be meeting momentarily. A docent does an introductory spiel outside now.
So basically you can walk up and down.
They let one group in at a time now to space things out. Thank you. And now it's my turn. Entering the tomb of Abraham Lincoln. Visitors are greeted at the front with a prototype of Daniel Chester French's seated Lincoln statue, which he made for the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The interior of the tomb was redesigned in the Art Deco style in the 1930s, though of course that is not native to Lincoln's time. It does make this tomb very unique. There are now physical distancing markers all over the place. Going one way through the corridor, there are several small bronze sculptures of Lincoln on the way up to the burial chamber. And this is the burial chamber of President Abraham Lincoln. He is buried 30 inches behind and 10 feet below in concrete beneath this red marble cenotaph. First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln is buried behind this wall, as well as their sons Eddie, Willie, and Tad. After exiting the chamber, there is another corridor of Lincoln statues. Alright, I wasn't too rushed. I was in the back of the group, otherwise I would have had to move through more quickly. But again, it's always an incredible and powerful experience entering the tomb and paying my respects to the great Abraham Lincoln. And this is the back side of Lincoln's tomb. And this circular area right here is the actual burial chamber. You can see when you're in there, there's this stained glass window, and the cenotaph is right behind it. Now, Abraham Lincoln is actually buried behind that cenotaph I showed, and he's buried 10 feet down under concrete to avoid body robbers. So actually, we're quite close. Well, I noticed there's a bunch of pennies right there, but we are actually quite close to Abraham Lincoln's remains, perhaps as close as when you're inside. In December of 1865, his remains were removed from the vault, which is right down there, and they were placed in one that was built right here where this stone marker is. And he was in this one until 1871, when he was first moved into the burial chamber of the newer tomb. Again, my other Lincoln tomb video has a lot more of that information of the whole Lincoln's remains ordeal. So if you're interested, check that one out. When Abraham Lincoln was originally buried in this cemetery in May of 1865, the funeral cortege would have entered through that gate right there. I don't know if that's original or not. And then it would have gone down this very road in a procession followed by thousands over to the receiving vault. Now here's this little Oak Ridge Cemetery sign. I think this has been placed here in the past year. I don't remember this being here. But also behind it is a very old bell tower. Now this bell tower is interesting because it holds a very historic piece of stone. This right here is the actual slab of stone that was in the receiving vault that Abraham Lincoln's casket was laid on. And this is the spot where the grandiose funeral of the first assassinated president originally ended, right in front of this original receiving vault for the cemetery. You can see the top of the tomb's obelisk on top of the hill here. This receiving vault is where Abraham Lincoln was originally interred. You can see it's still intact and restored. This is where Abraham Lincoln and Willie and Tad also were buried in 1865. Alright, so now that we've done Lincoln's tomb, I'm gonna go explore some new historic graves and areas of the cemetery that I have never seen before. So I think I found something. Just a little down the road from the receiving vault is this memorial to the Sangamo Electric Company, who gave their lives forgotten country during World War I. This appears to be another World War I marker to Maccabees. It's a memorial erected by Capitol Tent Number 1 in 1914. You can see on this globe it has a tent. Not sure what this is for, but that's interesting. And right here is the Grand Army of the Republic Mound. It's not all that much of a mound, but this is for Civil War Union veterans who were in the Grand Army of the Republic, which was founded in a town nearby called Decatur. And these are some Civil War graves. Here atop the mound is this monument with some cannonballs and a part of a cannon. I've noticed that every grave here has at least 1 penny on it. Here are some old steps in one of the older parts of the cemetery. This mausoleum is so faded, can't even tell what the last name was. It's made out of an interesting red stone. That's fairly unique. This appears to be the grave of a fairly wealthy German immigrant family, the Kraus. You can see it has a bronze plaque on it, a very faded photograph. That says something in either German or Latin, which most of the Germans spoke. This is the towering tomb of Bishop and Mrs. Rayburn. It looks like it is topped by Mrs. Rayburn. Well, I found one of the graves I was looking for. Right over there is the grave of Ninian Edwards, one of the founding fathers of Illinois. He was the only governor of the short-lived Illinois territory. Then he became one of the first governors of the state, and he was also U.S. Senator. I believe the first U.S. Senator from Illinois. He does have a statue inside the rotunda of the Illinois State Capitol. Adjacent to Ninian Edwards is the grave of Edward Louis Baker, who was the U.S. consul to Argentina at Buenos Aires for quite a while. So he is a very esteemed diplomat. This is definitely one of the older sections of the cemetery. This grave has collapsed. Of course, graves do get damaged in time. Here's a fragment of a grave, a decorative element. Not sure where it came from, but just laying there now. An interesting boulder grave marker. Here in this back section is a grave of a very little known person. I had to do some digging to find out about this guy. This is Reed C. Waddle, also known as Kid Waddle, and he was a big-time criminal in the Victorian era. At a young age, he became a professional con man and ended up being very much involved in the New York City underworld. By the time of his death, he had an international reputation, and this was because he sold fake gold bricks worth millions of dollars. They were actually fake, but He would make a lot of money off of that. You can see he died fairly young at 34, and that is because he was in Paris at that time doing some criminal work, and a famed criminal bunco artist ended up shooting him 6 times over a disagreement. So he was killed in Paris, and he was laid to rest here in the cemetery. Sometimes these stone carvings you find in cemeteries are interesting. So this one's carved like a little chair with this man's hat resting on it. There's a big Celtic cross, and you can see the top of Lincoln's obelisk in the background. Here's another broken gravestone. This is the grave of John Todd Stewart, and he was Abraham Lincoln's first law partner here in Springfield. When the self-taught lawyer Abraham Lincoln first moved into Springfield, he was a state representative by that point, and he and John Todd Stewart first started to practice together. He would go on to start practicing with William Herndon, whose grave we'll see soon. This is the grave of Nellie Grant Jones. She was the daughter of General and President Ulysses S. Grant. She was born while they were at the White House. Now she went on to marry this guy, Frank Hatch Jones, who was pretty wealthy, and they lived most of their life in England. Here's a grouping of Spanish-American war veterans. Alright, here is the grave of poet Nicholas Vachel Lindsay, a man whom I didn't know too much about before I visited his home here in Springfield. If you'd like to learn more about him, I'd highly recommend watching that video. You can see he's buried next to his parents, his father, who was a doctor, and here, this is his grave. Now again, most people don't know too much about him these days, but he was very popular in the 19-teens and 20s. Despite his days trekking across the country, espousing his gospel of beauty, he would end up committing suicide in the house he was born in Springfield in 1931. You can see there are various pennies. Looks like a little marble left for him. Now, while I was here at his grave, I wanted to read a poem that Vachel wrote here in Springfield at his house, which very much relates to this cemetery and this city. Now, this poem is titled Abraham Lincoln Walks at Midnight in Springfield, Illinois. It is about Abraham Lincoln, who also visited his house, which you gotta watch my video on that. And it was written in 1914, so it is against a World War I context. It is portentous and a thing of state that here at midnight in our little town, a mourning figure walks and will not rest. Near the old courthouse, pacing up and down, or by his homestead, or in shadowed yards, he lingers where his children used to play, or through the market on the well-worn stones, he talks until the dawn stars burst away. A bronzed, lank man, his suit of ancient black, a famous high-top hat and plain-worn shawl, make him the quaint great figure that men love. He cannot sleep upon his hillside now. He is among us, as in times before. And we who toss and lie awake for long, breathe deep, and start to see him pass the door. His head is bowed. He thinks of men and kings. Yeah, when the sick world cries, how can he sleep? Too many peasants fight, they know not why. Too many homesteads and black terror weep. The sins of all the warlords burn his heart. He sees the dreadnoughts scouring every main. He carries on his shawl-whipped shoulders now the bitterness, the folly, and the pain. He cannot rest until a spirit dawn shall come, the shining hope of Europe free, the league of sober folk, the workers' earth, bringing long peace to cornland, alp, and sea. It breaks his heart that kings must murder still, that all his hours of travail here for men seem yet in vain. And who will bring white peace, that he may sleep upon his hill again? And here you can see on the sign that Lincoln's law partner William Herndon is buried this way. But as you can see, that sign has been slowly eaten away by the tree. Just over there is Lincoln's tomb, and here lies his longtime law partner here in Springfield, William H. Herndon. Lincoln had a long relationship with this man, 17 years as a law partner. He was obviously a very significant figure in Abraham Lincoln's life. I always find it really interesting when tree logs are carved into gravestones. They sometimes mean like a branch of life, but this is a culmination of trees. This is the eagle-top grave of Colonel William Henry Bissell of the Mexican-American War. Now, one interesting fact about Bissell during the war is that he got in a confrontation with another military officer, that being Jefferson Davis, future president of the Confederate States of America. Davis challenged Bissell to a duel, which Bissell accepted. However, just before they started taking shots at each other, their seconds were able to get the record straight. But who knows, if he had been successful in that duel, history might have been changed. Perhaps there would have been a different president of the Confederacy. And here is the grave of John L. Lewis, not the civil rights leader, instead a very, very important labor leader in the early 20th century. He became the president of the United Mine Workers of America, a very major union for miners, which was of course very important in this region. Through his position, he was able to negotiate the country's first programs for health and retirement for workers. This was before Social Security and all of that. He did hold a lot of political sway among workers. He actually went against FDR when FDR came out against the Nazi Party in Germany. But he did a lot of good work for workers, and LBJ gave him a Presidential Medal of Freedom just before he died. He also organized the Congress of Industrial Organizations and United Auto Workers. Here's some, looks like some unions have left their stickers at John Lewis's grave. At this corner of the cemetery are a collection of Illinois war memorials. I went into these a little more in depth in my Lincoln Tomb video, so you might want to look at that, but I'll show them off real quick. There's the giant globe of the Illinois World War II Memorial, a tablet depicting the Battle of Chosin at the Illinois Korean War Memorial, and there's the Illinois Vietnam Veterans Memorial with an eternal flame. Alright, thank you for joining me here at Lincoln's Tomb and Oak Ridge Cemetery. I was glad to go a little more in depth with the place. If you like this video, please check out my other Lincoln videos here in Springfield, as well as other historic cemeteries, presidents, graves, all sorts of stuff. So please check out those other videos. My mask is falling off, and thanks for watching.